What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the Finding Hope podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Bundy, and today is such a special episode, especially for my girlies out there, because one of my good friends, Jada, is on the podcast. She is a physical therapist who specializes in pelvic floor and women's health physical therapy and currently works at an outpatient clinic in Los Angeles. She grew up and went to college on the East Coast and has been living in LA for almost a year. Jada is so passionate about women's health, feeling comfortable in your body, and advocating for yourself in the healthcare system. So, welcome to the podcast, Jada.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so stoked. And I'm so excited for you guys because I know that was a lot. But basically, what you're going to walk away from in this episode is knowing your body so much better as a woman and knowing how to advocate for yourself, how to help your body, not hurt your body, how to feel comfortable with your body. And if you are listening, this is 1,000% for the girlies. You might get a little bored, uninterested, maybe grossed out if you're a guy trying to find hope in this episode. So I would just say listen at your own discretion. But my girlies, this is so for you. And I really wanted to bring Jada on because I'm so passionate about women's health and nutrition, as you guys know, and understanding your body as a woman with how we're going to exercise, what we're going to eat, what we're going to fuel our body with. But it's so important to understand our anatomy, and especially as a woman, how we can just learn how to use our bodies in the ways that they were created to be made. And so I'm so excited. I feel like you girls are going to walk away just feeling so much more empowered about being the woman that you are.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Jada. I'm a physical therapist and I specialize in pelvic floor PT and women's health. So I work at an outpatient pelvic floor PT clinic in West Hollywood. I went to PT school in Boston and found along the way that pelvic health and pelvic PT was a section of PT that I honestly didn't know existed. I really was passionate about professional sports before and really wanted to work in that realm, and then just felt like I was missing something and missing out on this women's health piece of healthcare that I feel really passionate about and excited about. And once I found pelvic PT, I really just never looked back. So I got to do one of my clinical rotations, my very last one in PT school, at the same company that I work for now. So I got to graduate already knowing a lot about pelvic floor PT and women's health. And so my first day at that clinical, I just kind of knew that it was it for me.
And I kind of remember you saying too, when you were in school, before you specialized in pelvic floor, didn't you kind of mention how there was hardly any classes on it? You were so surprised how little it was talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I did a 6-year PT program, and in 6 years of school, undergrad and grad school combined, we had 2 lectures on the pelvic floor.
Wow.
I think one on incontinence and one on pregnancy, and that was it. And those are 2 really important pieces of pelvic health, but they are only 2 pieces, and there's so much more to learn. And so almost everything that I learned was in continuing education outside of college and during my clinical rotation.
Wow. And just for the people listening, because I found out what pelvic floor was when my older sister got pregnant and she had to see physical therapists for that and all of those things. But up until then, I honestly didn't really understand it much either. So can you just give a brief encompassing of what is the pelvic floor even, and why is it important? Why should we know?
Yeah, totally. So everyone has a pelvic floor. I will start there. This episode I know is more for the girlies, but everyone has a pelvic floor. It's really, I kind of describe it to my patients as a hammock of muscles for all of your pelvic organs. So everything involved in reproductive health is basically encompassed in your pelvic floor. And so it's a bunch of different muscles that work together that perform a lot of different functions for your body. But yeah, I should have brought my pelvic model. So we had
a little visual. That's okay. Well,
but yeah, and there are a lot of things. Pregnancy and postpartum recovery is one piece of pelvic health, but pregnancy and postpartum are two things that I treat. Urinary or fecal incontinence, pelvic pain, and pelvic pain can be a lot of different things. Sometimes it's just, endometriosis. Sometimes it's really painful periods. Sometimes it's pain inserting tampons or having gyno exams.
Yeah.
All of those things are encompassed under pelvic floor. And so it can spread to a lot of different areas of your body. I have plenty of patients that come in with pelvic floor issues that now manifest in back pain and now manifest in hip pain or lack of mobility. So your pelvic floor is a part of your body, and it's something that is really, really integral to our movement and everyday life. Every breath you take even increases pressure down towards your pelvic floor. And so our pelvic floor is very useful and very involved in our day-to-day life and our day-to-day movements and activities, and it's just not something that we pay that much attention to until something goes wrong.
As you're talking, is it something that it's important to know about so we can maintain the health of our pelvic floor and know how to strengthen the muscles if it's kind of like what's holding all of our organs together? Is that sort of where you benefit a lot from understanding it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me it's two things. One is knowing, yes, how to maintain strength and maintain health of your pelvic floor. Sometimes we do things throughout our life that end up putting a lot of strain on our pelvic floor or eventually creating problems down the line. And so knowing what those things are ahead of time, I think can make a really big difference. Almost like you're paying it forward for your body. And then the second thing is knowing that when something's wrong, to get help. I think I see so many patients every single day that tell me they wish they had known that this was an issue years ago or months ago and that they could have gotten help. And so I love when people come in and I get to see them and get to work on these things, because there are things that we'll get into that you should not have to live with, and you don't have to. There's help available for sure.
I love that so much. So one thing, because we'll get more into the details in pelvic floor and what you can do, what you should do, what to look out for. But I really want to talk on just feeling comfortable in your body, because that was something I noticed right away when I met Jada, is how for women you are. And it was so cool, because I think when you're comfortable with your body and you're comfortable in your own skin, it's so much easier to actually want to support and applaud the other women around you instead of having this competition with them. And so did you, for the girls watching this, I feel like what are things that you have really held on to in feeling like, oh, I'm comfortable in my skin and I'm okay to be comfortable because of this. And it's actually helped me have such a heart for every other women in my life, to see them for their unique beauty, to see them as they were created and not feel inferior towards them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've realized with this job is everyone has insecurities. There is not a person on the earth that does not have at least one insecurity. And so I think knowing that everybody's struggling with something on the inside, and my job I definitely get a good peek into people's personal lives. People feel really uncomfortable sometimes, especially women with their anatomy. And I really hope that when women walk out of sessions with me or sessions with any pelvic PT, they feel less shame or less guilt or less uncomfortable with their body. And I think especially surrounding reproductive organs, we feel really uncomfortable with them. And I don't think that we should. There's no reason to. Your body performs so many functions for you every single day, and I think we should celebrate that and realize that our bodies provide so much for us. And so feeling grossed out or feeling uncomfortable or feeling like something about you is bad is a recipe for just more insecurity. And so I think sometimes it just starts with knowing more about your anatomy, so that you're able to feel like what you have is fine and normal and good.
Absolutely.
I spend a lot of time definitely talking to patients about how patients apologize to me a lot for like, oh, I'm sorry I'm on my period if we do a pelvic exam, or sorry that I haven't shaved, and all these things that you shouldn't have to apologize for. These are completely natural things that require no apology and no guilt. And I think women are definitely trained to feel guilty about a lot of things, and we shouldn't. So don't feel guilty about these things.
No, I love that you said that. And I mean, I totally get that. I mean, I would never even talk about my period for so long because it was something I didn't really understand. And when it got to the point where my symptoms were so bad and I was kind of forced to realize maybe these things aren't normal, and it was great because it actually pushed me to learn about my body, not in the way that it was taught in school or in a textbook, but actually being studied as a woman and figuring out what things are going on and the way your hormones work. And I know once I understood it and I got into a bunch of research and natural ways to help your body when you're going through cycles, it made me feel so empowered. And now, I mean, I talk about it with whoever. It was so funny. There was one time, my old roommate, her boyfriend, he was staying with us and he was visiting, and she was on set for like a week filming. She's an actress. And so we were spending so much time together. And women's health and like cycle syncing and seed cycling was just such a natural part of my verbiage because I had gotten so excited about, I know what my body's doing now. And so I had been speaking about it like so naturally for so long, and he was there, and like almost every day I was like saying these things just like so casually. And by the end, he had dinner with my roommate who he's dating. He was like, yeah, like I never knew so much about the women's cycle until Gala. And like that was something I never would have even thought about, of like man knowing, I have a period, where it's like, okay, yeah, we all like, that's a known thing. And so it really took me actually, like you said, just literally learning for me to be like, oh my gosh, this is actually so normal. And the fact we aren't talking about it, we're limiting ourselves from being able to improve our quality of life because right now, all the information we currently know on a standard basis is so little that anything we experience or go through is quote unquote normal. And the more I've talked about it, the more other people are talking about it, it's like, oh my gosh, okay, nope, let's change that. Let's improve this. That's not okay. That means we need to listen to our body here. So with learning more about your body and feeling comfortable, what do you suggest women kind of do to even start?
Yeah, I love that question. Honestly, my first piece of advice, look at your anatomy. I tell so many patients every day, just take a mirror and look at what's going on down there. It is important to know that that's a piece of your body that belongs to you. And so many times pelvic floor issues can be really hard to tackle if we feel super disconnected from our body and our anatomy. And realizing that your reproductive organs are yours just as much as your arm is yours and your like hair is yours. And I think just take a look. I honestly think that makes people feel so much more comfortable after you feel like you know what's going on. A lot of times people go to the gyno, and I'm sure some people listening can relate. If you go to the gynecologist, you kind of just tune out and hope they get whatever information they need, and then just send you on your way, and you're like, oh, everything's good? Perfect.
Great. I'm just going to scroll on my phone. You do your thing.
Exactly. But I think if we have a better idea of this is what my anatomy looks like, this is what feels comfortable for me, this is my normal, it makes it a lot easier to notice when something goes wrong and makes things like the gynecologist and pelvic PT a lot less nerve-wracking, because you don't think it's some foreign area that you've never thought about before. Doesn't need to be some taboo part of your life. It's your body. And I've always felt pretty excited about talking to people about things that feel taboo and feel like TMI. There is no such thing as TMI when you're at pelvic PT. Like, I love it. Truly hear it all. And I want people, hopefully, to take away from this being able to feel more comfortable in talking about things. Whether something's wrong or something's perfectly healthy, it's okay to talk about your health. It's your body.
It's your body. Yeah. And I love that. And I was just saying to her before we even started this that, it does feel so foreign. It's like, oh, I don't really understand it. I don't really know much. So we're just gonna kind of pretend it doesn't exist until I need it to.
Right.
And I do think there is a lot of harm in that, because just like in anything, I mean, if you pretend that your senses don't exist unless you need them to, I mean, you're just missing out on so much quality that you can experience. And I love too, Jada had said this as well, and I, especially for my listeners, because I know this is like, ooh, this is the little taboo conversation, but, and you guys know this, like, I'm saving myself until marriage. And I think because of that, I've just ignored anything with my reproductive organs, because I'm like, no, I don't need them right now. And I think it is so, so important to realize, and I love how Jada was saying to me earlier that is one of the functions for sure, and it's such an important one, but they do so much more than that. Like, you should care, and you should know, and you should know what they look like. You should understand how they work and what things are meant for what. And not only for the purpose of having sex, but because there's so many other reasons that we have them in our bodies. And I think for me, I mean, this is me preaching to the choir, just by turning a blind eye and being like, I don't understand it. I don't think I need that right now. I'm going to ignore it. I know that there's just so much danger almost in that, of being like an ignorance is bliss sort of person. And in the times that I have actually stepped in and been like, wait, no, I want to figure this out, or I want to just understand it, even if nothing seems wrong, because you could be listening and you're like, I feel fine, like everything's great. And that's actually perfect if you feel that way, because I feel like when nothing's wrong, it's almost the best time to learn, because then you'll know if something ever is.
Yes. There's a lot less stress around it when nothing's wrong. And I do think, to your point too, just because someone hasn't had sex does not mean that you don't need your pelvic floor, and does that not mean that it needs to be something that's shut off until it's time for that. Like, it's something that's so important still. And with your menstrual cycle, there's so much that goes along with your pelvic floor. And I have plenty of patients that have never had sex and still have some sort of pelvic floor thing to focus on, or thing that we need to pay attention to. And even, gynecology exams, pap smears, periods, tampons, all of those things are outside of the realm of sex still, and are still important. And knowing that, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but knowing that if it hurts to put a tampon in, that's not normal, and that's something that you should get help for. And pelvic PT is a really good place to start. So I think all those things are important. And like Kayla said, just because you might not be using something right now for this purpose doesn't mean that something couldn't come up down the road. So focus on it while you're feeling great, and you'll have more information and less stress when the time comes. So
Absolutely. What would you say are some of just the best exercises you can do as a woman? Because I know I saw trending on TikTok a while ago, everything about, oh, my abs totally transformed when I started doing pelvic floor moves and things like that. And what just kind of comes to your head is, okay, these are basic ways I can strengthen my pelvic floor. I can keep it healthy. I can maintain it.
Yeah, definitely. The first thing I think is that sometimes it's not about the specific exercise and more about how you do certain exercises. So making sure that you are managing your intra-abdominal pressure well when you exercise is one of the most important things to keep your pelvic floor healthy. So not holding your breath through exercise. We are all pretty famous for sucking in our stomachs and holding our breath when we exercise or when we just exist. I can't tell you how often I notice that I'm just sucking in my stomach for no reason. But when we do that, if you can picture your abdomen kind of like a balloon, the top of the balloon is your diaphragm and the bottom of the balloon is your pelvic floor. Okay. So when you inhale and your diaphragm flattens, your pelvic floor is expanding and absorbing that pressure down below. So it's almost as if you squeeze the top of a balloon, the bottom of the balloon expands, right? Yeah. That's exactly how the diaphragm and the pelvic floor work together. Wow. So if we hold our breath and then squeeze in our core, which is at the sides of the balloon, we're putting a lot of weird pressure up against our diaphragm and down onto our pelvic floor, and we're not allowing for this nice like equal opposite pressure relationship. And we can end up getting a lot of pelvic floor tightness from that because we're constantly shoving pressure down with no reprieve from that. So breathe is the biggest thing that I can say to start.
That's so interesting. So good to know. And also with breathing, is that like, is breath work helpful for that or
Yeah, I think breath work is awesome. And one of the probably the first thing that I do with almost every single one of my patients is work on diaphragmatic breathing. And we turn that into, we call it pelvic floor lengthening. So really it's diaphragmatic breaths, so deep breaths, trying to breathe into your low belly and actually help to expand and lengthen your pelvic floor as you inhale. And then as you exhale, everything just kind of returns back to resting position. So breath work is awesome. And I think it really can help you get connected with your pelvic floor a lot better. Yeah. And so I'll have some things on my Instagram by the time this goes live for sure.
Yes, you
that can help you focus on some of that breathing. And it's a really, really good place to start when you're trying to connect your breath with your pelvic floor or trying to just feel your pelvic floor in general. Yeah. So that's definitely the first thing. Also, I know that Kegels are a hot topic for sure in terms of pelvic floor exercise. And there's a lot of information that's gone around about do Kegels and then don't do Kegels. And then Kegels are bad or Kegels are good. Kegels can be a really helpful tool. And I think doing them under the guidance of a pelvic floor PT is great. You can use them for a lot of different things. But a Kegel is just a muscle contraction of your pelvic floor the same way as like a bicep curl or a quad set is a contraction of those muscles. And so what can happen is women can do a ton of Kegels, and I've had patients come in saying, I've been doing a ton of Kegels every day for 2 years. And then they have a really, really tight pelvic floor, and that can create other issues too, like leaking or pelvic pain or constipation. And so if you're noticing that you're doing a lot of Kegels and don't really think it's helping, or you're noticing other issues, you might want to stop doing the Kegels and see a pelvic PT, because no one needs to be doing 100 Kegels a day. Kegels can be a good tool if they're prescribed for you, but they aren't right for some people. And so sometimes they can be perpetuating the issues that we're already seeing.
I love that you said that. I remember she said that one of the first few times we were hanging out and talking, and I was like, what? Oh my gosh. Because all I had heard is do Kegels, do Kegels. Like, it was just shoved down my throat, and it kind of made me feel better because I was always so lazy about it. So it's like, well, no professional has told me I'm fine. But no, I love that you touched on that, because I think, again, it kind of goes back to what you were saying throughout this whole episode of knowing your actual body, because I think you'll know that, oh, okay, I am tight. I am like, I'm having these other symptoms, and I keep doing what everyone tells me I should do. Right. And then you can notice and you can identify, maybe I should change that. Whereas if you don't really know your body, then it's so hard to know what's right for you, what's wrong for you. And something that Jada talks about constantly, which I love and I want to press into, is our bodies are all so unique. Like, they are so individual. And she's even made me feel just so much better about my body and being a woman and my reproductive organs, because it's easy for there to be a norm where there really is no norm. No. And what you learn about in textbooks, what you see in textbooks, what you see on TV, that is just that that person.
Yes.
And it is not a majority. And I think that's also where there can just be a lot of like shame about your body, or I don't understand it because, oh, it didn't look that way that I had seen it at one point when I was learning about it. And so I love how you're such a good advocate of always making women know that everyone's body is so different, and that's amazing, and it's beautiful, and that's not wrong if you look like this or you have this.
Yeah, it's so true, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I preach this all day long. I feel like at work where I've had patients even ask me when I've done a pelvic exam, is my vagina normal?
Yeah.
And it almost breaks my heart because the thought that this person was out in the world thinking that they weren't normal it like breaks my heart. I want people to feel comfort in knowing that not everybody's anatomy looks the same, and that's fine. The same way that everyone's face is different, everyone's reproductive organs are different, and they're different shapes and sizes and colors and everything. And just because yours looks different than you think it should look based on that actor you saw on TV or that textbook that you saw in school, like, that's okay. You don't have to look like everyone else, and you shouldn't look like everyone else. This truly the same way that external parts of our body look different, internal parts of your body do too. And parts of our body that we cover more often, those also look different, and that's totally fine.
And I think too, just as you're a woman listening to this, also just be aware of the way you speak to your girlfriends as well. Because I know, like, there have been times in my life where a group of girls and I, like, we're hanging out and they're just joking, but talking about the way somebody's body looked, and whether it was like, oh, like her arms, or it was like reproductive organs, it can be like, oh yeah, they had this, and then they make it seem either weird or wrong or whatever. And I just want to like make you guys be a little bit more aware of your verbiage, because there's been so much just freedom and like breakthrough that I feel like Jada brings to so many women by simply the way her demeanor is in knowing we're all different and knowing it's beautiful that we're all different, and not speaking in a way that's making fun or seeing things as different and weird because they're not what you might look like or you're used to. And so just encourage one another. And if your girlfriends are talking to you about things like this, or you want to start these conversations with your girlfriends, like, really try to create that safe space to know we all should be able to freely talk about these things with one another. It should always be a safe space. It should never be something that feels awkward or uncomfortable. And just kind of like ripping that Band-Aid and making it less taboo, I think, is such a good place to start having these conversations.
I think a lot of times we want our body to look a certain way for someone else. And to look a certain way so that someone else thinks that we're attractive or thinks that we should look a certain way. And know that, one, you don't have to change what you look like for anybody else. You should never have to do that. When you are with the right person, you will not have to change anything about yourself. But also know that you shouldn't try to tailor what you look like for someone else's pleasure.
So true.
Do it for yourself. Focus on these things for yourself and your comfort, and not for someone else thinking you're attractive or someone else thinking that you look good. The right person will love you regardless of what you look like.
Absolutely. And even like taking it back to the beginning, we were created equal. And that also goes for what we find attractive and our reproductive parts. And I think that is something that women kind of don't always feel even free to think that they're equal in that. And so, I love how you said don't feel the need to change that for anyone else or to look a certain way or to feel a certain way. Like, that's you, that's your body.
Yeah.
And that isn't something you should need to settle for what somebody else wants.
Yeah, 100%. If someone wants you, they want you.
So moving on, this I really want to touch on because I know I have had my own journey with it, but I want to talk about just navigating the healthcare system as a woman, because it's now, I do feel like there's a lot more resources, or once you start taking some non-traditional routes, you can learn a lot more. But I feel like that's kind of the start of us not knowing anything, is the way our healthcare system is.
I think it absolutely starts with education too. So many of my patients come into pelvic PT not knowing much at all about their anatomy, what's normal versus not normal, what should be happening with their bodies at all. And so people have been suffering in silence for a really long time and really haven't been pointed in the right direction by healthcare professionals in a lot of cases. So knowing that it's hard to advocate for yourself, but so worth it to learn how to do that, because at the end of the day, it's your body and you are the one who's going to care about it the most.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the way that our healthcare system is set up in a lot of ways does not lend itself to nice, long, in-depth conversations with our doctors.
No.
We all, I'm sure, have the experience of going into a doctor's office and getting to talk to them for 1 minute, and then they're out the door and you don't see them for 6 months to a year. So that's not always the doctor's fault. Sometimes it's just that's the way that our healthcare system has been set up, and it's really unfortunate, and truly does mean that it's important and a good skill to have a spiel down. This is what's wrong. This is what's not normal. I know this isn't normal for my body. And having that line ready that I know that this is not normal for me and my body, and being firm in that. Sometimes you do have to push to get certain things tested or to get referred to a different provider, but it's so worth it when it comes to your health to be able to do that. So if you don't feel like you're being listened to or being taken seriously by a healthcare professional, say, I would like a referral to see another doctor. I know that this is not normal for me. Sometimes doctors hear one word and can give you the short answer, but at the end of the day, you are the expert on your body. The doctor might be the expert on that material or that piece of medicine, but they're not the expert on you. So
I love that.
You do have to be able to advocate for yourself and know that doctors are also people. So they might not catch every single thing from one thing that you say in an appointment. And so keep track of what's normal for you and know if something's off, say that and ask to see someone else if you're not being taken seriously, because you deserve to be listened to and deserve to feel supported in your health journey. But know that you are responsible for at least bringing it up and seeing the right person. And it can be really hard as a woman to feel heard and seen in the healthcare system. So keep trying and just be firm in the things that you feel aren't normal or happening in your body, for sure.
I agree. And I feel like, and you might have a different opinion on this, which is totally fine, but I think as well, for me, some red flags that I look out for when I am talking about these things is if they want to put me on a pill almost immediately to solve whatever symptom I'm having. I think that is, for me and my body, because I know my body, I know that's something I'm not comfortable with. But even if I was comfortable with it, our bodies are so much more complex than taking a pill that is magically going to solve our issues. And there's usually a deeper reason or root to what is happening. So I think if you are getting a response that's just a quick fix, and maybe that isn't a pill, but maybe that's just, a lot of women suffer with that, or, that's pretty common. I would get told that all of the time of, it's normal to have cramps. That's fine. Like, it's normal to have these symptoms, and it's normal to have these mood swings, and it's normal. And so you're probably fine as long as they're nothing crazy or super unregular, then everything's okay. And so for me, those are some pretty red flags, because the more I've learned about my body, the more I understand my body, it is never that simple. And I heard this quote from, I don't remember her name, but she's the one who basically created the cycle syncing method. She wrote the book In the Flow. I'm blanking on her name. Yeah. But I loved, she had said, no period symptom is normal. that should not exist. There is no such thing as a normal period symptom. And that blew my mind. And it trailed into a whole list of ways you can naturally help your body. You can identify, oh, I shouldn't actually even have headaches. I shouldn't have this pain. I shouldn't have these digestive issues while I'm in my cycle. And that was just it was so freeing for me because everything else told me those are normal and that's okay. And so to even just hear a different perspective was what shifted a lot for me. And I also think too, like, I love how you said, really, it is tough to advocate for yourself, but also the more research you'll do, you'll know what questions to even ask.
Yeah.
Because for so long, I didn't even know what to ask.
Totally.
I was just like, well, I mean, okay, like, I'll take your word for it because I have no information. Like, you're the expert. I know nothing. And I love that you all said you're going to care more about your body than anyone else.
Totally.
And so you should become an expert in your body so that way you can at least have the verbiage to communicate what you need and know that you even need that. Because for so long, I didn't even know what I needed.
I love that you said that too. And I think knowing what you feel comfortable with is also really important when you're trying to navigate the healthcare system, and knowing if you want like medication as a last resort, know that about yourself and say that up front and say, what are my other options? Those aren't things that are mandatory. They're not things that a doctor can make you do. And so know if you want a alternative or a different choice to even try first, ask for that. Physical therapy is a huge piece of that, where
I love physical therapy.
I mean, physical therapy is what I consider like a first resort. When something hurts, and even outside of pelvic floor, if your shoulder hurts, if your hip hurts, if your knee hurts, if you have all these orthopedic issues, yes, surgery is probably on the table as something that can help you. Some people don't need that. Some people do, but you don't always need it. And I've had plenty of patients come to PT first and say, well, I don't want to jump right to surgery. I would rather try PT for 3 months and see how that helps my symptoms. Yeah. A lot of people avoid surgeries that way.
Wow.
And so it's the same thing where I see a lot of patients that have various pelvic floor issues. Like, let's say they have pain with penetration or speculum exams. Yeah. Maybe medication is a quicker fix, and maybe that's helpful for some people. Maybe you don't have the means to go to PT for 3 months, and that's okay too. But if that feels more your speed and that's something that you want to explore instead, ask for that. Ask for a prescription for physical therapy. And so know that there's no shame in any way that you want to navigate the healthcare system. If you want the meds, if you don't want the meds, if you want to try something else first and have more, invasive strategies as a last resort, that's totally fine. And know that, like, I talk about this a lot in regards to pregnancy and people's birth experiences too, is this is about you, and it's not about anyone else, and there's no need to compare yourself to anyone else, because what works for you and what works for me are going to be totally different. Because like we already said, our bodies are different. So know that it's okay if your healthcare journey, even if you're dealing with the exact same thing as your friend, you could go down completely different treatment routes, and that is fine. Yeah.
Oh, I love that you said, and I love you said, like, there is no shame for either option that you feel comfortable with. Yeah. Because it's your comfort level. And I know a lot of times too, like, the physicians can press hard for one. And maybe they're pressing hard for the one that you are comfortable with, and that feels great, and that's amazing. But when they're pressing hard for the one you aren't comfortable with, it can feel like, oh, am I making the wrong decision? And just, I love you said, just stay true to yourself and just ask for the route you would prefer to take. And also too, yes, they are people at the end of the day. And I think it is so important to always just continue to ask questions. And I knew a woman who she's had kids and everything. And I only recently learned, because my friends are all now married and pregnant and have kids and the whole thing, that your abs separate when you give birth. Yeah. And I know this woman who she's in her 60s now, and just finally, I think a physical therapist or a chiropractor checked and her abs have been separated this entire time for probably over 30 years now after giving childbirth. And she's gone to all sorts of doctors, and I mean, that's just never even crossed their mind to check. And so literally just educating yourself, advocating, and being like, even if I've been told that everything's okay, it doesn't ever hurt to double check. It doesn't ever hurt to just say, hey, I know this person said this, but can you confirm it for me? Or can you just double check? Every time you go in, just make sure. Because I would hate to be like, oh my gosh, 30 years in pain and misery and living in that way just because no one looked.
Yeah, absolutely. And also knowing that one of the reasons that I love PT so much and why I wanted to go into PT is because we are able to spend more time with patients. And so, like we talked about before, your doctor might be spending 1 to 5 minutes with you every 6 months to a year, whereas PTs, I normally see patients once a week for 45 minutes at a time. So we can get to know you a lot better and know more what's normal for you and what feels good for you. And it's easier to tell when something comes up because we're not just looking for the red flags. We, of course, are screening for those things, but we're also looking for you to feel strong and you to feel good and empowered. And we're looking more in depth than that. And so take yourself to a pelvic PT if you feel like something is wrong. And especially with pregnancy and postpartum care, there is always something that we could work on. Even if you're just coming back to feel strong in your core again, ab separation is, again, totally a natural part of pregnancy, but there are things that we can do about it. And sometimes women have very little separation post-birth, and sometimes women have very large separations post-birth. And knowing how not to make those things worse, knowing how to exercise in the right ways, how to engage your core in the right ways is so important in not perpetuating any of those issues down the line.
And what, even with that, like, what are some of the exercises you can do to get those ribs back?
Yeah. So one of the big things that I think we make a mistake with is focusing just on our six-pack muscles. So just on those visible, superficial muscles in our core. But what really gives you so much stability and strength is your transverse abdominis, or your deep lower core muscles. That is always where I start contracting someone's core and getting some more ab strength in postpartum. It also acts like a support belt for your whole lower trunk. And so especially when you're caring for a newborn baby and there is a lot of bending and a lot of forward motion and a lot of strain on your lower back, contracting from your lower core is going to help to take away a lot of those issues and will help act as more of a corset for your abs. But I would say if you feel like you have a pretty significant separation of your abs, we check at 3 different spots on your core, so pretty much all the way down. Go see a pelvic floor PT. We will check and we will walk you through the different exercises to do and not to do. And one big thing is knowing to not dive headfirst into really hard exercises right off the bat. Take those 6 weeks postpartum to recover and heal, and then gradually start moving back into core exercises after that. But knowing, and I say this all the time to my postpartum patients and my pregnant patients, you're not only healing from a birth, you're healing from a whole pregnancy. And so our society sets people up to believe that you should be recovered 6 weeks later and you're all good to go. That doesn't make any sense.
None. Absolutely none. I've seen my sister and friends after 6 weeks of giving birth, and I'm like, not a chance should you even lift a finger.
Right.
I mean, what your body goes through, I love that you say, you gave birth, but it was an entire 9 months of your body changing.
Yes.
And to just snap back, especially when you're getting no rest.
Right.
You're already fatigued, you're run down, you're now literally the life support of another human. It's not like, you give birth and you just, let me take some R&R for 6 weeks and I'm back to myself. Your body's like now having to utilize itself in a whole new way, basically 24/7. I mean, you don't ever sleep.
No, this whole bounce back culture, I think, is so dangerous and sets people up to be disappointed in themselves and feel like they're not doing enough or not, recovering well enough or not good enough. And it's so not true. At the end of the day, like you said, you also now have a newborn to take care of. And a lot of my patients have other kids also. So know that it is not your responsibility to bounce back. It's your responsibility to heal and do what's best for your body and your family. And know that after those first 6 to 8 weeks, things do get better in terms of hormones and mood and energy. And it's just a little bit of a slow recovery after that. And that's also okay. But having some guidance back into activity and back into exercise from a pelvic PT, I think can be really valuable.
So then I really wanted to touch on these two things real quick. What are some signs that, okay, I should go see a physical therapist? And then also, what should you even ask to feel like I'm in good hands? Because I know I've seen physical therapists, my sisters have seen physical therapists, that we think everything's great because we just don't know. And then we go to somebody else and we're like, oh my gosh, they didn't even scratch the surface for what I needed. And I didn't know to ask for that.
Totally. I think the first things is when you see a pelvic PT, know that you should feel listened to and supported and safe in that session. So you shouldn't feel like anyone is pushing a pelvic exam on you or pushing a ton of Kegels right off the bat or things like that. Have someone really listen to you and adjust a plan of care based on that. So what I always have people tell me when they come into sessions is, yes, what are your symptoms? How often is this happening? I do a pretty thorough subjective interview. So make sure they're asking a lot of questions. I think sometimes we talked about this with doctors saying one thing and then getting, okay, here's a medication to take, or here's 5 exercises to do. But it takes a little bit of time to, ask some questions and see what really might be the root of someone's issue. And I think another thing is asking if you aren't seeing progress after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, asking if you're going to pivot at all, if you're going to try something new. There are a lot of different ways and exercises that we can do with people. So sometimes we just have to pivot if something's not working for your body. And the biggest things that if you are noticing any of these things, go see a pelvic PT. If you are leaking urine or feces, most common ways are with a laugh or a cough or a sneeze and you're peeing your pants a little bit. You're dancing at a wedding and you pee your pants, or you have to pee really bad and you're putting the keys in your front door when you get home and you pee your pants. Those things are different types of urinary incontinence and they are not normal. They are common, but there's a big difference between common and normal. So if those things are happening, you should see a pelvic PT because something's going on. If you are experiencing pelvic pain, whether it's really, really bad period symptoms, endometriosis, if you have pain putting in tampons, if you have pain with sex, if you have pain with gyno exams, you should not be crawling off the table with a speculum exam. That is not normal. Having a pap smear might not be your favorite day, but it should not be painful. It should be maybe mildly uncomfortable and it lasts for 2 minutes and it's over. So if those things are causing you a lot of pain, something's not right and you should go and see a pelvic PT. If you're pregnant, you should go and see a pelvic PT. I think I even see patients that come in and nothing's wrong per se, but they're pregnant and just want to be able to get guidance in exercise that's safe for pregnancy. And then maybe when things come up, we can go over that. We do birth prep with patients. I go over labor and birth positioning, perineal massage, stages of labor, all of that kind of stuff, breathing for labor and delivery. All of that can be really helpful. If you are postpartum, it doesn't matter if it is 6 weeks postpartum or 10 years postpartum, whether you've had a vaginal delivery or a cesarean delivery, there is so much that we can focus on postpartum. And I do think it's kind of a gift you can give yourself in having just support from another person, having someone there to ask about you, and not that you don't love your baby, but a lot of people ask about the baby and not a lot of people ask about the mom. And I think that having that space that you get 45 minutes or an hour about you and about how you feel in your body is really important.
So good.
And even after a cesarean delivery, there's a different challenge that comes along with that, and getting your core to contract again. I have had people 5 or 10 years after a C-section that working on their C-section scar relieved back pain. So there's so much that can come from seeing a pelvic PT no matter how far postpartum you are.
Oh, that's so good. Oh my gosh, you guys. Well, I hope this has been really just eye-opening or insightful for you, or conversations that you didn't even know you could have and be okay having. And I know when I kind of first dove into anything with women's health, at first it felt a little strange and it took a minute to marinate in my mind. And so I would just encourage you, like, listen to this and let it soak in. Don't have a bias. Don't have these perceived opinions. And then from there, just do your own research. Hopefully this sparks like, oh, I want to YouTube some of these exercises. I want to read some of these books. I want to maybe look into this symptom that I've had for so long and didn't even know was a symptom. So as we close, are there any like, okay, I want to leave you guys with these few things of let's take action in these ways and let's be able to be empowered as women.
Yeah, I think like we talked about in the beginning, just don't feel like you should be ashamed about just existing and having body parts. That's okay. And take a look at what's going on down there and connect a little bit more with your body. I hope that people can go away from this not feeling like any part of their body is foreign, but feeling like you just know the lay of the land a little bit better. Another thing is just when you feel like something's going wrong, just get it checked out. It's worth it. It's worth it for your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health, and advocate for yourself. It is hard, and I know that it's not easy. Not easy being a woman, not easy being a woman of color, advocating for yourself in a healthcare system, but finding a healthcare provider that you trust is so invaluable. And I really think that it's worth the pain of trying to find someone like that. But finding someone that you trust makes all of these things 10 times easier and less nerve-wracking. So feel comfortable in your body, advocate for yourself, know that there is help if you need it. There is help when things are going wrong. You don't have to live with pain. You don't have to live with incontinence. You don't have to live with weakness. All of those things are so fixable. And so if you're struggling with something and you don't know if it's a pelvic floor issue or you don't know if there's help, just ask. I promise you that if you find a good provider and a good pelvic PT, you can at least get an answer for who else to go to. So ask the question, because it's so worth it. The amount of times that I tell people, you don't have to live like this, it's please do yourself the favor and just get checked out.
Get checked out.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, well, thank you guys so much for listening. I'm so thankful for you, Jada, for coming on, for being so open and just so knowledgeable and having such a heart for women. I love that. That was like immediately what I noticed about her. And then learning more about what she does, it's just so evident the heart you have for girls. It's so cool. So thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all this. And if you guys want more and just have a better understanding and some more takeaway things, you can find her on Instagram at the Pelvic Pearl.
I just post a lot of pelvic floor PT education. So a lot of the stuff that we talked about today, just reasons that you should go see a pelvic PT, incontinence, constipation, sexual health, a lot of that stuff. So if you have questions about any pelvic floor issues, or maybe if you should see a pelvic PT, feel free to just message me and we can chat about it. But
you're so sweet.
So fun.
Well, thank you guys so much. I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday. Bye.